I love minis, and when it comes to minis, it's hard to compete with Warhammer. The designs and lore are just so absurd and unique. From Skaven to... That's not... Digimon. From Skaven to Blood Angels to... Also not Warhammer. Digimon again. Whatever. By far, my favorite army has got to be the Tyranids. That has to be a Warhammer mini. It just has to be. Today we're going to be making a Kabuterimon out of a Tyranid Broodlord. Let's get started.
Broodlord is evolved to Kabuterimon!
Warhammer minis are frickin' expensive, so I bought this guy off Facebook Marketplace for $25. Not bad considering the retail price is $52. Let's take this super expensive mini and cut it up. No turning back now. Kabuterimon is much smoother than the Broodlord, so we need to de-spikeify him. I smoothed his wounds with an X-Acto blade and a mold line scraper. Then I did the same thing for the arms. One of the reasons I was so excited about this conversion was because of those ridge details. It's crazy how much they line up with Kabuterimon's. Once it was nice and smooth, I easily snapped off the... I took the arms and I... Got it. I'm very strong. Next, I carefully removed his claws and that's fine. And still fine. Kabuterimon has 5 fingers on all his hands. The Broodlord only has 3 on his top hands. Did I have to fix this? Absolutely not. But I'm going to be cutting corners later, so I figured I'd stick to the model for now. To make the extra fingers, I'm going to be using green stuff. I started with a glob of green stuff on the hand, working 2 fingers at a time. I'm using the bottom hands as a reference for this step.
Don't you point those dirty green sausages at me!
Okay, so it doesn't look great at the moment, but you've got to trust the process. I added the claws, then I refined the finger shapes a bit, and then I did the other hand. I did a little more work on these off camera, just to help me sleep at night. Next, I removed the arms and began working on the head. I started by carefully removing the teeth from the top of the mouth. I cut those chompers down the middle and set them aside to use later on. I really love the long tongue, but I thought it drew too much attention, so I cut it out, trimmed it down, and then glued it back in. Next, I removed the teeth from the bottom jaw and set those aside for later. And now that he's looking like a weird fish man, it's time to start sculpting. I started with the lower jaw, placing a wormy dealie of green stuff along the bottom. Green stuff can be really hard to work with sometimes. I poked it until it looked pretty good, and then I re-added the teeth from the bottom jaw from earlier. Then I started working on the side gums. I easily stuck some green stuff to the side, and then did the same on the other side. I worked with both sides at the same time to make sure that it looked symmetrical. I placed one half of the top teeth on one side and the other half on the other, and with that, we've got ourselves a toothy maw. Then I refined those gums to look more like gums. God, this looks nasty. Next, I started on the horn. I needed this to keep its shape, so I used a coffee stir stick as an armature. First, I started by cutting out the size I wanted, and then I started roughing out the shape. Next, I covered it with a thin layer of green stuff. And trying to avoid getting fingerprints on it, started to add some details. Once the green stuff was a little more set, I went in and refined those details a bit more. Once the horn was done, I went in and sculpted the rest of the samurai helmet exoskeleton. First, I bulked up the top of the head, and it ended up looking like a Sherlock Holmes hat. So I added the flaps to the hat, and smoothed those out to make a more baseball helmet shape. Next, I went in and started adding those ridge details. Now it's starting to look like something. I then added these spiky line thingies. Then poke some holes before gluing the horn in place. I sculpted a horn for the back of the head and then glued that in place as well. Once the head was fully cured, I removed the mini from the base and then began working on the feet. First thing I need to do is make all the toenails equally long and nasty. The best way I found to attach toenails is to go superglue, green stuff, superglue, toenail. The toenails were either scavenged from the earlier trimming or sculpted out of green stuff. Now, Kabuterimon has 2 back claws and the Broodlord only has 1. I thought about adding this, but I thought it would make it look worse, so I didn't. Also, Kabuterimon's stinger is weird and bad, so I kept the Broodlord's tail stinger instead. Comment down below if this ruined the video for you. Once the toes were cured, I started putting it all back together, starting with the arms. Then it was time to add the wings. Now I scoured the internet looking for a plague drone or a blight lord, anything to get those nurgly insectoid wings. I could not find one anywhere and I refused to pay full price. While I was browsing a local game store's website, I found these. Of all the times I googled Nurgle wings, insectoid wings, Warhammer wings, I can't believe I never found that Green Stuff makes transparent monster wings. I was so happy when I found these. They were only $15 and I got to buy them locally. So I snipped up the supports, breaking one of them in the process. Once that was fixed, I adhered them in place using the same combination of green stuff and super glue. Those things aren't going anywhere. And with that, Kabuterimon is complete, but we need to bring this Mon into the digital world, so let's make a base for this thing. I started by stripping the base the mini came with. Then sanded it down to give me a nice blank canvas to work with. Now I thought about making a jungle base like when they first arrive in the digital world in the anime, but I thought it would be cooler and more thematic to go with a more inside the internet digital world kind of base. The majority of the base will come from this piece of a robotics toy, and these scraps are from Mega Bloks pieces that I hacked up. Once I had an arrangement that I liked, I glued the pieces in place. To add some conduit detail, I used guitar strings. You just bend them and then glue them in place. This can take a bit of finagling, but the result is well worth it. Next, I glued in a piece of a zip tie. Zip ties have great ridge detail, which make for great cheap greeblies. More guitar wire. Then to fill some of these empty spaces, I glued in some thin cardstock. And I didn't like the shape, so I trimmed it down. Then I glued in that Mega Bloks circle, trimmed the zip tie, and added even more guitar wires, more cardstock, more wires, and finally, more wires. Okay, that's looking sick. Time to glue our bug to this base. I wanted this model to look like it was flying. The best way I found to do this is to use a really strong wire. I didn't have any strong wire, so I scavenged some strong wire from a spring. I bent the wire with pliers until it was mostly straight. And I decided the best place to attach the wire was through the tail. So I removed the stinger and then poked a hole for my wire to go in. This felt as weird as it looks. Once the hole was deep enough, I stuck the wire inside. Then I reattached the stinger using more glue, green stuff, and glue. Finally, I fiddled with the green stuff, trying to blend it in with the rest of the tail. And with that, it's complete and ready to prime. Of course, once I primed it, I realized one of its claws fell off. So I carved a new one out of Mega Bloks plastic and glued it in place. And with my janky homemade wet palette, I began the painting process. I did a base coat of Mawcrag blue on the body. I painted the bones of the wing black as a kind of primer, later to be painted the same blue. I used a Mephiston red mixed with white for the fleshy bits, and a Koroks white for the toofs. All of the exoskeleton bits were painted a Bastion Grey. I love the transparent wings, but they were looking a little too clean, so I made a mix of water, Agrax Earthshade, and a touch of Averland Sunset. I slapped that on and then wiped it away immediately with a paper towel. This left behind a yellow tinge, but kept the transparency. Next, I went in with some lighter blue to highlight those raised areas. Most of the highlight details I just did over and over again until I was happy with it. I wanted to keep the paint job pretty simple to maintain that cartoony vibe, not just because I'm bad. Finally, I dry brushed some lighter gray onto the exoskeleton bits and the ridge details, and then moved on to the base. The base was painted with various shades of green. I used mostly craft paint for this, so this took many, many coats. I tried to add as much variation to these tones as I could while maintaining that circuit board vibe. When I was satisfied with the way it looked, I painted the sides of the base black and went outside to do some oil washes. This is what outside looked like, so I instead went into my shed to do some oil washes. I made these washes by combining oil paint with white spirits. I made a black wash for the mini and a phthalo green wash for the base. This will bring out the details and make it look like I know what I'm doing. And of course, as I was applying the washes, one of the wings broke off. I clearly don't know what I'm doing. I took the model inside to fix the wing and add the finishing touches. And with that, it's time for the glamour shots. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing. Let me know what nostalgic cartoons you want me to turn into miniatures next. Bye!
Kabuterimon!